This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
I think they know this place already. Let me make some hakdamas. Hakdama number one is there is a tremendous amount of information to go through. Tremendous amount. I will obviously not be able to go through all of the information, but as you'll see as we proceed, it's not really. It won't make enough gemina to the maskanas. A lot of things you'll understand by the end. It won't make enough gemina to the maskanas of whether today there is Tcheiles, not Tcheiles. But there is a tremendous amount of information. Well, why do I start with that Akdama? Because the time allows only for about an hour. That's usually what the shir is. And let's see what I can get in an hour. I'll ask the Olam to hold off on Shailas and Auras. What I get through. Anybody has a Shaila or you should write it down. I'm sure that by tomorrow I'm going to have many emails anyways on the topic. And you obviously have a precedent in Akdama because you sat here live. That's one Hakdama. Another Akdama is why to talk about it in this week's Parsha Shlach. You can talk about it in Koirach. It says, Beged Shekulei Tcheiles. Okay, and it's definitely something which causes a tremendous machlekes and everything. Today that is the controversy, or this controversial topic. So why not talk about it in Parshas Korach? So it happens to be Motzei Shabbos is already Parshas Koirach, so maybe that's one one reason. And and also there's more. I mean, obviously it's in the Parsha of Tzitzis because the Chassam Sofer is already medayik in the Psukim that we say every day in davening. We say Vasulam Tzitzis. Kanaf Psil Tcheiles, we say, see this part already, I didn't prepare. But we say on the part of tzitzis, we say L'Doiroisam, L'Doiroisam, right? That we're going to have tzitzis L'Doiroisam. Right after we say L'Doiroisam, we say, I need to sit there. Well, I know you guys daven every day, but me, I prepare shiurim on Tcheiles. This is why in halacha you're not supposed to say it bal peh. You see, so it says v'nasnu al tzitz. Vasulam tzitzis al kanfei bigdayim l'dayroisam. You're going to make the tzitzis l'dayroisam for generations, all the generations. V'nasnu al tzitzis akanaf psil tcheiles. Al tichsam sefer tcheiles is not l'dayroisam. The word tcheiles goes after l'dayroisam. That means that there's going to be a time in the history of Klal Yisrael. It's been the last maybe more than 1,000 years, if not even close to 1,500 years. The Deraisam, we don't have Tcheiles. It's not a Siba that is Mechayiv that there shouldn't be Tcheiles, but that's something that requires a Hezber. So you have to realize that's the reason. Maybe at the end I'll say another reason why I spoke about it in Parsha Shlach. Maybe at the end, if you remind me, that'll be the one thing that if I forget, you should tell me at the end. I said there's going to be another reason why we should talk about it in Parsha Shlach. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3 is that I'm going to do. I'm going to do like this. I'm going to explain the framework of the shir, and then I'm going to fit everything into that framework. And I think it'll be easier. At first, I was mesader it. In years past, when I've talked about Tcheiles, I sort of just went with the mahalach that I heard from all of my Rebbeim, all the Gedolei Yisrael, whether it's Rav Elyashiv, Rav Chaim, all the Gedolei Yisrael today, all the Gedolei Yisrael in the last Tkufa, that we don't have Tcheiles. Tcheiles is Nignas. This is the Lashon of the Aruch HaShulchan. Aruch HaShulchan in Siman Tes, in Sif, I think, in Aleph. Aruch HaShulchan says that there was a gadol from the previous door. We'll talk about it in a moment. And he says that his Lashon is V'da, she's a Shon Svuras. Shechad Ispoyer, there was a great person. He doesn't say great, but he was a great person. Shechad Ispoyer Shemotza Chilazin, that he found the Chilazin, that where the Tcheiles comes from. And he made Tcheiles. And there were those that were Nimshach after him. Eza Noshim, he doesn't sound so happy, the Aruch HaShulchan. Ach lo yaya l'shemeya migdolei hador. He had nobody that listened to him from the Gedolei Hador. Umichlal Yisrael, and from the Gans Klal Yisrael. Isbatal Adover, Ad ki yavoy goyel tzedek, b'mher b'yameinu amen. So what's that? How do you know? How's the Aruch HaShulchan know? And that in this battle, this story, what do you mean? Maybe we'll find the Tcheiles. Today they found the Tcheiles. So maybe, what do you mean? that it will be nisbatel until Mashiach comes. So that is the Miskabel Etzleinu, the Sifri, and the writings in the Arizal and others, that Tcheiles, they have Midrashim, that Tcheiles was Nignaz. There's two ways to understand what it means, Nignaz. Nignaz is like, the Arna Kodesh was Nignaz, the Kalim, certain Kalim were Nignaz. So there's one way to understand, and that seems to be the way that the Aruch HaShulchan understood. That seems to be the way that the Beis HaLevi that Rav Elyashiv brings, maybe we'll discuss soon. But there is such a mahalach out there that it's Nignaz. Nignaz means that we don't have it anymore. And therefore, that hashkafa is to not be trying to find it, and if you would find it, to assume that which you found is not it. That's the idea of nignaz. And not only that it's not to be looked after. We're not raiders of the lost ark. So for those that are maven. It's not whoever's maven I'd like to talk to you after this year. But Akapanim, it's a lot of catching up to do. But it's not our thing to be looking for things that are nignaz. That's the hashkafa. That was the attitude of the Gedolei Yisrael. And the Maisa, that's how I went all the years. And I didn't really go into it much more. Many years ago, I gave a shir about it, and I went through some of the rayas, and I went through some of the gemaras. And I said this time I decided that with I'm asking mechila from the Gedolei Yisrael, who all don't wear tcheiles, and obviously clearly seem to be going with this mahalach of nignaz. That's what Rav Chaim wrote in, they say maybe over 10 or 13,000 letters. That's what the family says. And maybe between 10 and 13,000 letters that they saw that he wrote the word nignaz, and he wasn't accepting any of it. Okay, so, he didn't, and when they would have rayas and gemaras, every answer was nignaz. And therefore I asked Mechila to even discuss the topic, because the Gedolei Yisrael went with a different gang, and that's the malach I went with all the years. What am I? I'm Hareini, Afar Ve'efer, I'm Batal and Mavatal to everything that the Gedolim even. So that's how I went. This year I decided I'm going to go differently. I'm going to go through the rayas, and I'm going to go and try to discuss bring the rayas, and bring the rayas maybe that are not like this, and go back and forth through the rayas. Now, why am I giving you this hakdama? Because I want to break down the framework. It's very important. The first part of the shir is really the most important part of the shir, and everything fits into that. I was going to do it the other way around, but I think you'll have an easier time understanding what the direction is. There's a very important hashkafa, shaila. Hashkafa means not a hashkafa, it means an attitude. What is your attitude when you're coming to discuss Tcheiles? Now, there's one attitude when you're coming to discuss Tcheiles. Like I said, nignaz, that is all a waste of time, because all Gemaras and Rishayim and anything that you're going to bring that'll say there is Tcheiles, it all won't matter because it's nignaz. And therefore, it's like saying, I found the Aron HaKodesh. Who cares? It's not negate. So you didn't find the Aron HaKodesh, or we don't care if you found the Aron HaKodesh. That's one mahalach. I'm not going to go with that mahalach tonight. And then you have a right to go with that mahalach, and that's the mahalach that most Gedolei Yisrael, not all the Gedolei Yisrael, go for. And I won't get involved. There's always one person they say is wearing tcheiles. So you realize it's. It's like anybody that learns understands that's. If all the Gedolei Yisrael are doing something, so that's. I don't even have to finish my sentence. But Agopanim, the idea though is one hashkafa is that nignaz, no questions. I'm not going with that tonight. Now there's another hashkafa. And one hashkafa is that no, we're allowed to try and find tches. I'm going to go within that hashkafa, and I'm going to break it down into two parts. I could look for tcheles and I could find tches, because nignaz is not exeris hakasiv, and it's barer that we'll see the Radziner and there are other great people that went with that mahalach. That nignaz does not mean don't even try and don't waste your time. And that nignaz means that we don't have it and it's lost. But if you find it, gewaldig. I'm going within that framework, which the Radziner was an Adam Gadol Mamish. He was a Baki in Mamish in Torah. He was a Baki Tak in sciences also. He was a very big Goyin. He was a tremendous Goyin. He was a brilliant person. And then we're going to go within that hashkafa. You have a right to look for the tcheiles. Now, within that hashkafa, I'm going to break it apart, and that's what I want to explain. There's one attitude that, let's say I find you many rayas that something is tcheiles. So then once I'll find you many rayas that something is tcheiles, and now I will say, okay, so this is mitzad the circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence means that by process of elimination, this is tcheiles, because it fits very well with this, and this. So then this is tcheiles. Now, if I'm going to have another 5 gemaras, rishonim, everything that don't sound like that, I'm going to be matcha them because I found tcheiles. That's one hashkafa. And that's one type of a way of learning, which if taka, you're going with the attitude that we could try to find the tcheiles. So then, if you have clear rayas, or at least somewhat clear rayas, or even clear rayas that you found Tcheiles, so now you have a right to go and say, okay, I have rayas, this is Tcheiles. And then if you have kashas on my rayas, so then I can answer up those kashas. Everybody understands me. As I go through, it'll be more clear, obviously. Okay, I am coming from a different hafana, a different hashkafa. You have to prove to me Tcheiles, which that makes obviously much more sense. I don't have Tcheiles for the last 1,200 years, 1,300 years, whatever it is. And I accept the fact that we're allowed to search for it. But you have to prove to me beyond the shadow of a doubt that what you have is Tcheiles. Which means I won't be willing to be doiche any Gemara or matche any Rishonim based on something that you found. If you will find me something that is beyond the shadow of a doubt, fits with all the Midrashim and Gemaras, Rishonim, whatever, then I will, yes, wear the Tcheiles. What's the Ashkaf? Everyone understands what I'm doing over here. But if you're coming in, for example, right? Let's say I were to tell you, and I'll show you as we go along, everything is going to hopefully become more clear. But let's say I were to find you Tcheiles, which is 70%, this is the Tcheiles. It fits with a lot of the Gemaras, and you have to be doicha the other Gemaras. Then Mashiach comes, and he brings you, and he says, no, Taka, that was not Tcheiles. This is it. This is it. And this one fits with everything. Is anyone going to say, no, it can't be. It's got to be the Murex Trunculus. That's the name of the Tcheiles. We'll talk. It's got to be this one. No, of course he's not going to say that. He's going to say, okay, that one Taka was close, but no cigar. Right? So I'm going with the Hashkafa. I'm going to be going with that attitude. I want you to understand which direction I'm going with tonight. I'm going. Now, I was myrich to explain that. It's the most pashut thing in the world, what I just said. It's obvious that anybody would be coming to learn objectively, right? Not with the malach, don't look for things, it's nignas, not with that, that type of malach. But if you want to show me this Tcheiles, you have to show me it's Tcheiles. You have to prove to me beyond the shadow of a doubt. And then I'll be willing to wear the Tcheiles. That's a very, very important nekuda. Very important nekuda. There's another, okay, maybe we should start. I could give akdamas and maybe we should start. Okay. I'm going to give you a little background over here. Let's go. We grew up, when I say we, I'm in the door, that's the door before you. I'm one door before you. I'm 30 doors before, because each door is mamish like fragnish. But don't worry, you're 30 doors ahead of the guys that are coming next year. So but I'm 30 doors ahead. But in the door that I grew up, which is, I'm about, I'm your, maybe a lot of your father's ages and whatnot. So in that door, we grew up, it sounded something like this. What's a chilazin, where the Tcheiles comes from? A chilazin was a fish. This is what our Rebbeim said. Your Rebbeim didn't say this. You'll see why in a moment. But your Rebbeim just said, we don't have Tcheiles, and let's go weiter, right? Der Rashi learned minisht. That's what your Rebbeim said. But my Rebbeim, and the Rebbeim for the last, I think, about 1,200 years or 1,500 years, they say Tcheiles is a fish. It's a dag, Lashon Rambam. Tcheiles is some type of a fish. And this fish we don't have. And therefore we don't have Tcheiles. And when Mashiach comes, we'll have Tcheiles. That's it. And Tcheiles, you can reclaim the mitzvah even without Tcheiles. And that's how our Rebbeim taught us. About 150 years ago, and they said Nigna, some of our Rebbeim said it was Nigna, and whatever. About 150 years ago, there was a great Jew. He used to read Siner, like I mentioned before. And he was, like I said, he was a big goyin. He was a baki in different languages. He was a baki in Torah. He wrote a sefer called Tzvunei Tmunei Chayil. In that sefer, he basically takes you through his trip and search for Tcheiles. He has over there, you can look over there, it's very very well written. He has, basically, he had certain rayas, and his trip to I think it was called the Maritime Museum in Naples, and he basically found a certain squid, which releases some type of a substance, It was called a cuttlefish. This fish that he found is called a cuttlefish. It releases some type of an ink-like substance when it's in danger. And the Rambam says that the ink that comes out, the substance that comes out of this, of what's called the chilazin, is shachar ketyoy. It releases some type of a substance like that. He found it, and he believed, like I said, that nignaz is not exeris akasiv, and it's not like it's absolute that it has to be that you can't look for the Tcheiles. So Mela, he felt that this was, which stemmed with a lot of what Chazal said, and this was the Tcheiles. He sent it to a chemist, because the problem is that the ink that came out was a blackish ink, and even though the Rambam says it starts like that, but we need to make it get from black to blue. And so he basically sent it to a chemist. The chemist was able to put it together with a certain, I think it was, I'll say soon what it was, a certain type of a substance, which made this black turn into blue. And that was enough for him. And he decided that this is Tcheiles. There's a Tcheiles. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Radziner Chassidim, the Breslover Chassidim, if I'm not mistaken, I think they went with it. And like you saw in the Aruch HaShulchan, none of the other Gedolei Yisrael went with it. There's different rumors, maybe the Marsham, the Betzina wore it, etc. Okay. But that was the general Gedolei Yisrael. And Beis Halevi Gadua was very, very misnagid to this. And that's, that was that parsha. That was that parsha. In 1914, again, fast forward a little bit. Now that parsha ended until 1914. In about 1914, there was a great Jew named Yitzchak Alevi Herzog, right? Isaac Alevi Herzog. He was a great Jew. He became the Rav Arashi afterward. He was a Rav in that time, I think, in Ireland. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. Mamish, like a tremendous guy. And he also made a search for Tcheiles. And he also went with the Mahalach that Tcheiles is not a Nignaz, is Exeris HaKosef. And he went first and he wrote a doctorate. He was also a brilliant man in both worlds. And he went on and he wrote a doctorate disproving the Radziner's Tcheiles and showing the potential of two other chilazim. When I say Tcheiles, I mean two other chilazins, two other potential chilazins which the Tcheiles came from. He was madche the Radziner's Tcheiles bikash mamish b'doichet legamre. He showed that the dye that they were using was called, I wrote it down because I'm not so knowledgeable in these things, but it was some type of a Prussian blue. The dye that they were using, the chemical they were using to color the black to blue, he basically showed that you could take anything, you could take human blood and also turn it blue with that type of a chemical. And therefore with that he was doiche, and for other reasons that didn't stem with lots of what it says in Chazal, and he was doiche legamre the Radziner's Tcheiles. And Kimat, I think everybody realized and that became miskabel that that's not the Tcheiles. That's not the Chilazin. When I say Tcheiles, sometimes my language will go back and forth. Tcheiles. He therefore proposed two other Chilzainis, two other Chilazons. One of them is called the, I think, Anthina, and the other one is called the Murex Tranquillus. To say that, don't think that like 40 years ago when they started this new Tcheiles, this is not a new thing. It was over 100 years ago that Rav Isaac Alevi Herzog had already proposed this idea that perhaps the Chilazin is the Murex Tranquillus. I'll call it Murex for short tonight. That way, have to say Trunculus the entire time, and I'm not sure he would want to say Shraga Kallus either. But so we'll call him Murex. He proposed Murex. The Murex, he was matche that it can't be the Murex. The reason was, he says, look, the thing that comes out of it doesn't fit. It's purple. The dye that comes out is purple. Again, it might fit other qualifications, but the dye that came out is purple. It's not blue. He couldn't produce blue, and he settled on the Anthina. The Anthina hangs out at the top of the ocean. This is not going to be Myrichan. It's some type of a blue snail. It's some type. It secretes some type of a blue dye. It's got these bubbles that come out. It looks pretty geschmack. And it's shtim with Chazal. The only problem that he had was that the ink, the dye that it emitted, he was not able to get it to stick to the begadim, to the clothing, in a way that would last. And it didn't have that strength that we know Tcheiles has, that it fades. It doesn't fade. He wasn't able to do that. And the Mela, it remained shver. Klaimar, it can't be the Murex. It certainly can't be the Radziner's. And it can't even be the Anthina because he wasn't able to get it to stick. Klaimar, he understood. It must be that I just don't know, because Chazal tell us that not only is there the actual Tcheiles, the actual Chilazim, but there's certain substances that you have to put together. And he figured that Mistama means I got the fish, but I don't have the proper substances, the proper chemicals, the Gemara calls it samonim, to be able to put it together to cause it to be that color Tcheiles and that sticking kapit. In the 1980s, there was a professor, and I wrote his name later on. I think his name was Zeiderman. I'll see soon. And he, once again, tried to promote the Murex Trunculus. Murex for short. The Murex for short. And like we said, it creates a purple dye. He managed to figure out the way to get the blue out of the purple dye. And the way he did it was, it is a little bit, again, in the sciences, I told you, you can spend hours on this stuff, but just in a very primitive form, it's basically dyes, you have to basically reduce them. You have to deoxidize them, which, to make a very long story short, I know once I say words like oxidize and reoxidize and reduction and whatever, I'm going to for sure lose everybody here because, nobody's interested in going back to chemistry class or something like that. So whatever it is, you have to do something to the dye. He figured out that if it's exposed to sunlight, then we get the blue color. Or if if you do some type of a cooking process to it, basically, if you cook it and then put the wool in before we reoxidize it, whatever that means. But basically, if we cook it with the wool, we're basically heating up the wool, then we can get the blue dye on the wool. That's it. That's it. He figured out a way to do the process. That's it. And then we'll see soon. He says it stems even with the Gemara, and we found Murex. We found the Chilazim. We found Tcheiles. With this, now there were Rabbanim that were involved. Not so much until years later. It wasn't so much Rabbanim in our world. Now, there were those that had rayas now. That there are rayas now, at least in Chazal, that the Murex would fit with the simanim that Chazal did give us for the Chilazim. Now, it's done one very important thing, which as we go through, we have to figure out. It's a very important thing. The Rambam in Perush Mishnayos, for example, tells us, let's say somebody would come along and he would take all the simanim of the Gemara, and he would say, okay, the siman for an esrog is this, and this. And then he would find something which fits all the simanim. You know what he would find? It's called a lemon. Right? If he would continuously work through all the simanim of the Gemara, he would find a lemon. There's no shaila. As a matter of fact, a lemon fits the simanim of Chazal more than an esrog. As a matter of fact, if you understand what I'm talking about, good. If not, it's even better. But that's that. So you'd find the lemon. Says the Rambam in the Perush Mishnayos, does his late sonis. We have a Kabbalah door from Messiah all the way back to Sinai. What's an esrog? Chazal gave us simanim to try to, sometimes for Aggadata reasons, sometimes for other reasons, or whatever. But we have a Kabbalah. And now you realize that could be part of the fight and the issue with Tcheiles. It says, if I have a Kabbalah, door, which obviously the Kabbalah was minutik, because there were 1,500 years where we didn't have Tcheiles, that everyone agrees to. It wasn't like there's some fight that someone says, no, there was Tcheiles and we just didn't know, it was hidden, or it was only by tzaddikim or something like that. It was totally nignas for everyone agrees, for at least 1,500 years we didn't have the Tcheiles. So now what would happen if I would have a door Kabbalah, and then would come along, I would do the simanim, and the simanim didn't shtim. I would say, who cares? Because I have a Kabbalah door. Right? But our problem is that we don't have a Kabbalah door. And Mamela, now we're going to try to use the simanim to create Tcheiles. But again, I just want to show you realize that might not be absolute. Because if you require a Kabbalah, if you hold that you need a Kabbalah, and that we're starting now a topic, this part now, is we're going to start going into the rayas. Is what I said, I'm going to hold off on my next akdama until we get to the rayas. We're now starting a topic where we're going to use rayas from the Gemara to prove to us what's Tcheiles. But you realize that that's all based on a premise that you have a right to do that, which itself is debatable. It's debatable. We're going to go in with that hashkafa. That's the idea. We're going in with one hashkafa that we could be searching for. We're going in with another hashkafa that it's something that the simanim are going to be enabling me to find it. And then the last hashkafa, which we'll get to at the end, is that even if I find something which fits a lot of them, can I now say that gives me a right to be matcha other gemaras and all the rishonim? Not all the rishonim. I only found 17 rishonim, but I'm saying, but it's the rishonim like the Rashis, the Rambam, the Taisus Rid, and the Ramban, and the Rashba, and all the rishonim shemipiyam anuchayim. So whatever. Let's go right. So now they found many rayas that this would shtim. Many chazals shtim with the murex. For example, there's a psikter of Kahana that says that I told you before why Rebbeim told us Chilazin is a fish. They have a psikter of Kahana that seems to say that the Chilazin has a shell. What has a shell? A snail. Oh, I'm sorry. The murex is a snail. The murex is a type of a snail. So Mela, that's very good. They found it, till now I'm telling you it's a fish, and that all of our Rebbeim told us it's a fish. I mean, my Rebbe, he heard it from his Rebbe, but okay. But there's a psikta of Kana, it says there's a shell. Did anybody ever see a fish with a shell? So Derech Agav, I went to the zoo on Friday, right? I took the Rebbetzin, because I got canceled from here, so decided to go on a date, and we went to the zoo, and it was a little bit hot out there, so we decided to go. They have like that part that has the fish, right? And me, I have a one-track mind. And I said, we got to find a fish with a shell. Is there a fish with a shell? Is there a fish with a shell? There is. What? The octopus was not in the zoo. He's not in the zoo. They have in the leftmost, there's two mini aquariums. There's a real aquarium that we didn't go to, but that you have to pay more money for. But that's not part of the date. But they had in the leftmost box of the first aquarium, the mini aquarium. So in the leftmost box, there's a fish there with a shell, and there's a whole Mama Shagansa drasha about this fish with a shell. But I'm just saying, is it possible? It's possible, but obviously, it's more mistaber that if something is a shell, it's probably a snail. Even I'll admit that. And therefore, the Psikta of Gana says that this chilazin, it does give off a mashmayas that it has some form of a shell, which would give a mashmayas that it's taka or snail. That's the Psikta of Gana. The Aruch calls this chilazin, that which Chazal say the Tcheiles comes from a chilazin, calls it a shavlul, which is a type of snail. And the Aruch is a Rishon. The Aruch says it's a type of snail. And the Medrash in Dvarim Rabbah, then it says Samasechem lebalsa me'alechem. That's when the Chazal tell us that the kids in the midbar, they grew with their clothing, etc. So they said that they were like a chilazin that grows with his clothing, and that gave off a certain mashmayas, like a shell. Like he grows with his shell. Like a snail grows with his clothing. The says it grows, his clothing get bigger. The clothing is that. Okay, that's debatable, but that's what they say. Okay, there's Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Chavav. There's Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Chavav that the Gemara brings down that in Vizardin, the Rasha he left over. I mean, he actually did two of them. He left over the trappers of Chilazin from the place called Haifa to Tzur, the Tyre. This is basically northern Israel, from Haifa all the way up the coast into Lebanon. And he left over the trappers of Chilazin. The trappers of Chilazin. The Chilazin were the trappers of the Tcheiles. He left them over, he didn't kill them. That's Kanira, where it was the actual, where you would find these Chilzainis. They found, and this was the start of everything in the 80s, they found how big is a football field? Does anybody remember from the Haim? It's about, it's 100 meters or 100 yards, I'm saying, but in Israel they don't say yards, they say meters. It's 100 meters by what? Was it across? So it's like 50, I think, right? They basically found a size of a football, 100 meters by like 50 meters, 8 feet deep, filled with shells of the murex. Filled. On the coasts over there between Haifa and Sur. That's pretty explicit. I mean, this is where he left over trappers. And look, they found murex there. So he left over trappers of Chilazin, and we found there mamish billions of cracked shells, right? Cracked exactly in this place where you get the dye out of. So great, we found a place which was clearly producing some type of a dye over there between Haifa and that, and it was murex. So that, and from that they say that's very, very, that's very, very telltale that the Chilazin is the murex. Again, they were cracked in the right area. There's a Rav Yah. The Rav Yah says the lashon Misha Yaker Mitchelis Lelavan, Misha Yaker Mitchelis Lekarti. You know that lashon that we always say. So we call it blue and green. He calls it in the Rav Yah. He brings Yerushalmi that we don't have this Yerushalmi, but the Rav Yah had a Yerushalmi bein Porpira to Pripapenin, something like that. And what's a purpura? What's a purpura? So in ancient Greek writings, purpura, this is Aristotle, who I don't think I've ever quoted before, but Aristotle, he never quoted me, but he says purpura is murex. So bein Tcheiles, Ligarti is bein murex too. So that's pretty explicit. That's pretty explicit. That's pretty explicit. There's Gemara in Sanhedrin, and Daf Yud Beis tells a whole story about that there was a gzeira from the Nesher. The Marzchia says, who is the Nesher? Nesher is like the Roman government, the Roman eagle, and there was a gzeira, and in that gzeira, Rava said to somebody quietly, don't tell them about the Tcheiles, because the Tcheiles, was under scrutiny, and they weren't allowed. There were gzeiras from the Roman Malchus against the Tcheiles. They say this shtims gewaldig, because all through the history, we have on record, in all ancient historians, that there were Gzeiras that the only people the Romans allowed to wear Tcheiles was the Malchus and the Big Day Malchus and things like that. So therefore Shtims gewaldig, right? Because you see that they were making these takanas, the Roman government was making these anti-Techeiles takanas, and no one was allowed to wear Techeiles. So it's very good. In other words, we find mamish gewaldik. We find that, in other words, we find a lot in the ancient writings that Romans made Gzeiras against murex. Excuse me, I keep on mixing myself up, but they said you can't wear the murex, and we find in the Gemara that they made gzeiras against wearing tcheiles. Okay, it's not the most biggest riot because maybe they made it against these fancy types of blue inks or whatever. Okay, but that's what they say. That shtims. Then there's a Gemara in Bab Metzia, and this Gemara is mamish by them. This is the raya, one of the rayas Burus. The Gemara Bab Metzia, Daf Samach Aleph, the Gemara Menachos. The Gemara says that Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give, you're going to have to give a din v'cheshbon, somebody who pretended that he had on his tzitzis tcheiles, and it was really Kla Elon. Really clear. Now, Kla Elon is basically usually upgeteicht as indigo. And indigo and murex have the exact same chemical breakdown. Basically, the dye of indigo and the dye that comes out of the murex is basically the same idea. So the Gemara says, if you go and wear indigo and pretend that it's tcheiles, you go and wear indigo and you pretend it's tcheiles. So then you should know Hashem is going to get you in the future because you pretended that you have tcheiles and really all you have is indigo. Okay. Now, Lamaisa, That's mamish unbelievable thing. The murex is the one thing which is the most doimim mamish to indigo that we have. That was 100%. The thing that we have the most doimim to indigo is taka murex. It's the most doimim. And so that's what Chazal said. If you go and wear indigo and don't wear the Tcheiles and pretend that it's a Tcheiles, so then you're going to be paid for in Shemayim, you're going to get paid back, right? So if I show you that the murex is the exact same thing as the indigo, this is mamish exactly perfect, right? It's exact. It's a chemical breakdown. It's the exact same chemical breakdown. Elamai, you'll say, no, I don't know. Maybe it's something else. No, but then the Gemara should have warned against this. Then the Gemara should have said, oi to the person that puts on his talis kla ilan or murex, and not the Tcheiles. The ad kama that the Gemara doesn't warn against murex. So then the Gemara would have vaday had to warn against murex, because murex is the exact same chemical breakdown and looks the same and feels the same and the same exact strength as the kla ilan. So this is mamish the raya brewer by them. Does everybody understand the raya? It's very important to understand the raya. You understand the raya? No, don't ask a kasha on the raya. You understand the raya or not? A kasha on the raya, maybe I'll do later. But I'm saying the raya, you understand? It's the raya brewer. This by them is the raya brewer. I once was, they sat 5 hours with Shraga Kallus. They know if they get Shraga Kallus, that's givaldic. You know, you got the Tcheilet, we'll get these guys, we'll get you guys. Right? So they spent 5 hours telling me this was mamish like the raya brewer by them. The raya brewer. In other words, if there is something out there that we don't, that is a substitute for Tcheilet, then you got to tell me. In the Gemara has to tell me, don't you dare, and they had murex back then, because you see excavation of 40 billion of them, right? That's a stark raya. Does everybody understand the raya? Yeah, that's a very important raya. If you understand the raya, good. If not, don't ask a kash on it. What? Indigo is a type of dye from what? From plant, yeah, Clayton's a plant. Yeah. That's clear, yeah? That's clear. Yeah, okay. That's the raya brura. Okay, they have other rayas, the Gemara Menachos says it's very expensive, and the murex is very expensive. Okay. The other raya they have is that we don't find any zeicher of anything. I can't even say this raya; it's ridiculous. And then there's another raya. The Israel Antiquities found a blue cloth, and they did a test, a substance test, and they found that it was murex. Okay, so they found murex. No, I'm serious. I'm not joking. They write this in every one of their books. They don't say that it was on a string, on a tzitzis. They don't say anything. This is what they say. I'm not joking. And they write, this is 100% conclusive evidence that Tcheiles was the murex. Okay. So then the Gemara Megillah on that Vav says, Zvulun was Svunei Tmunei Chayil. And it says, means that there are hidden things in the sand. And those hidden things are Tcheiles, Chilazin. And Taka, when you go to take the Tcheiles out of the water, he's buried in the sand. Mamish, it beautifully fits with this. That this is also something, he's Tmunei Svunei Chayil. He's mamish fits beautiful. He's mamish hidden in the sand. Okay. Let's see now a lot of Gemaras, okay? Now, those are the rayas. The Bikaron, I tried to bring the rayas. Those are the rayas that Tcheiles is murex. Those are the rayas. Now, again, if I'm going to go now and bring countless Gemaras, Rishonim, everyone, that are not like that, so now you have to, this is where I start the shir. Now your shkaf has to say one of two things. I found Tcheiles. I have found beyond the shadow of doubt Tcheiles, because let's say the Raya Brura, I think by their Rabbanim, is the one I said that they should have warned against something else. That's the Raya Brura by them, which I'll maybe answer Be'ez Hashem soon. But that's the Raya Brura. If that's a Raya Brura, now everything I'll bring you, you'll be matche, because I found Tcheiles. It's like as if I have a Messiah. Kivjachol. Let's say someone would come and tell me, I have a Messiah, this is Tcheiles. So whatever you're going to bring me, I'll be matche. By them, it's a Messiah. By them, it's already a Messiah. So everything is... Me, I'm not going with that Mahalach. I'm going to go with the Mahalach that, my Rebbeim, we didn't have Tcheiles. In the last 5,000 years, we didn't have Tcheiles. And the last 1,500 years, we didn't have Tcheiles. So maybe if I have Gemaras that it doesn't shift. Now, at the end of the Shir, I'm going to ask the obvious kasha, no, la yaya la yazik. What's the big deal? So maybe they're wrong, but who cares? Why not put it on? What does it hurt? And I'm not going to answer what the Chazon Ish said, but so then wear glasses without wear the frames without the glass. Because Bachram today do that. So I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to answer the question. I'm going to show that it could be mazik. Maybe. Let's get there. Okay.
Would that be just as bad as wearing the indigo if it's not?
Okay. Let's see. They say that what do you mean? It's a suffix. You're not doing it to trick somebody. The Gemara over there is talking about when you're doing it to trick somebody. Okay. So now, there are Gemaras, when you go slowly, that don't sound like the Murex. Now I'm going to go the next Malach. Possibly that the Murex is not the Chilazin. Okay, so I think also a lot of people they see it like this today. It's becoming even the bigger Rashi out there. So it must be something to it, there must be something to it. Let's see if there's anything to it. So the Gemara in Shabbos and Dafayin Daled, the Gemara brings down that what was kosher in the Mishkan, and the Gemara discusses that the trappers of the chilazin would tie the nets. That's what the Gemara says is the example of what was kosher in the Mishkan. No, so you could taina. When you have to trap these guys, do you trap them with nets? It would be ludicrous to trap them with nets because fish would fall right through a net. You trap a fish with a net. You don't trap snails with a net. They trap them. They have a whole mahalach how they get them today. But if you would want to trap them in the times of Chazal, you would probably use like a wicker basket, something like that, where they wouldn't be able to fall through. The way you would use it, and this is what I saw one Sefer Tain is why they're wrong, right? That's gefährlich, because maybe the net was tied very, very thin, like more of like a mesh or something like that. Okay, no, but again, I'm just saying what will happen anyways if I would find you one day like a fish, and it would be I would say, great, this Gemara stems more with the other way to learn, but that's not so. The Iker Gemara that you really have to don on is the Gemara in Shabbos Dafayin Hey. Now I was just going in order of Gemaras. I mentioned Ayin Dal. The Gemara in Shabbos Dafayin Hey says that if you tzad chilazin, if you do tzeidah on the chilazin, so then the Gemara says that you're over on sad. You're over on sad. If you trap the chilazin, you're over on sad. The Gemara then says if you're paitzai means to crack it or to squeeze it or something. We'll see what exactly. The actual pachetach usually means. Pachetach means to probably to crack it. That's the pachet. But like paitzayis moichai, right? The Gemara says. So to crack it, so it says over there you're over on dash, and that's a machlekes if there's disha, eng derech disha or whatever. Now that's the Gemara. Then the Gemara says, and if you kill it, the Gemara asks the kasha, what about netilas hashama? Excuse me. The Gemara asks, what about netilas hashama? And basically the Gemara has two teruts, and the final teretz of the Gemara is like this, very important. The Gemara says, I'm going to go through this Gemara in a moment. The Gemara says that no, because when I'm squeezing out the dye, I want it to live in order that the dye should be a better dye. But if I would squeeze it and it would die, pardon the constant usage, but if I would squeeze it and the animal would die, so then it's not going to be a good dye. So therefore, it's loinichale, the murder of this animal. Okay, it's the murder of the chilazin, because I want it to stay alive. Because kozman that it stays alive, the blood is better, the dye is better. That's what the Gemara says. Okay, let's go one by one through this Gemara. First thing, the Gemara says when you're tzad the chilazin, you're over on seida. You should know right away that's a world war, Kleimar. If you learn the chilazin to fish or whatever, something else, whatever it'll be when Mashiach comes, I don't know. So then Avada, you're going to tzad it, and you're going to be chayiv on Seder. The murex, are you chayiv on tzad, on Shabbos, if you trap a murex? What's the answer? The answer, this is a world war. Because Taisus Rid says, you can't possibly be chayiv tzad on a murex, on a snail, on these things. Why? Because he goes with the shita, the Taisus Rid, that a slow-moving animal, you can't be over on tzad. Something that you don't have to do any shtadlus to be able to trap. There are many Rishonim, Atil Rishleim Zalman, he holds that even an ant on Shabbos, I don't mean an ant and an uncle, I mean an ant. That Ad Kedei, that maybe even an ant, if you trap an ant, you're not over in a deraisa, Rishleim Zalman goes, because it goes with this type of idea. Which means that there's a large gamut of Rishonim and Achrayim, that there's no tzad possibility on a chilazin if a chilazin is a murex. If a chilazin will be something else. So then you can have tzad. Now, that's a machlekes Rishonim. But now you're going to come out, a murdik maisa. You're going to come out, there's a machlekes Rishonim, if on a slow-moving animal there's tzad. And now it's going to have another nafkamina. The nafkamina is going to also be, because of that, what's Tcheiles? That's, if you guys learn in yeshivas, you know that can't be. Anybody who learns in our yeshivas knows that's impossible, that as a result of a yisaidistic machlekes, I'm saying you would probably, get thrown out of your respective shirim for even suggesting such a thing. That based on a machlekes rishonim, which is yisaidistic machlekes, if there is tzad on a slow-moving animal, is tzad the maisa of getting it, or is tzad the taking away his freedom? Right now, Taif Saifi was free. That'll be the machlekes rishonim. As a result of that, it's going to come out of machlekes, and what is the chilazin? It's it's a very strange thing. It'll come out of machlekes and mitzias based on a machlekes and lamdas, which obviously is impossible. That's a taina. That's a taina. That it's probably not the murex. If it'll be some fish one day, we'll find out. And then whatever, or some snail that's a fast moving snail. Okay. Next is the the next Gemara. Okay, the Disha Gemara. Look, we don't have that much time, so there's a kasha from the Disha Gemara. The amount that comes out of it is not enough to be over on dash. The amount of dye in order to be over on dash is, the Gemara says, is kimloi sit kafel. Kimloi sit kafel is a certain amount of dye that has to come out, and that amount doesn't come out of one snail. And the Gemara says that if you were poitzit, beregular poitzayit, you're over on disha. But the problem is that you won't be chayiv on disha. You'll be a chatzi shir of disha, because the amount that comes out, okay, so I don't know, maybe the snails niskat no shir, maybe they were bigger, that's not nishkefelach. Okay. The next taina, it says you need to squeeze it. Why aren't you over on netilas shama? So Gemara says, because when you squeeze the chalazin, whatever, when you squeeze the chalazin, you want it to stay alive, because if it won't stay alive, the dye will not last. The dye won't be good. The dye won't be good. The dye won't color the way it will color. By the Murex, this is absolutely incorrect. By the Murex, the dye stays good for at least 12 hours after it's dead. As a matter of fact, the way they get the dye is after it's dead. In other words, what the Gemara is saying explicitly is the way to get the dye is you bedafka have to do it at the shas of you have to crack it and murder it at the same time, because otherwise you won't be able to use the dye. You won't be able to get the effect out of the dye that you want. That's absolutely not true by the Murex. Now again, I could moyat matcha this Gemara. All these Gemaras, they have ways to be matcha. But I'm going right now with the other ashkafa. I'm going right now with the attitude. No, let's say they'll answer, yeah, okay, they didn't know how to do it, but we now, with our modern technology, we do know how to do it, or something like that. Let's say they'll say something, right? Here, that's if you believe that you found Tcheiles, you found the Chalazin. Now you're going to have to explain to me this Gemara. But if somebody one day will come to me and bring me the real fish and say, look, this is a fish that when you squeeze it, taka, unless you squeeze it at the shas death and get the blood out right then, the blood won't be good, the ink won't be good. So then no one will have a kasha and say, no, it can't be. The Murex has to be the thing, right? Does everybody understand? I hope that's very important, but that's the direction I want the audience to understand. Okay, let's go weiter. There's another Gemara, I'm not going to go into it. There are things I'll just tell you about, which I won't go into. There's a Gemara Menachas on Daf Mem Beis. They say it's a raya to them. I say it's a raya fakir. I won't go into it because it's a little bit complicated in the Gemara. The Gemara goes through the process of the dyeing process of how you do it, and talks about cooking up the actual ink. So they say that's a raya to them, because you see you have to cook up the ink. Anybody who reads the Gemara even one time, all you have to do is even an art scroll. Right? If you read the Gemara, you'll say the exact opposite. The Gemara talks about the dyeing process, and the Gemara says that the way they have to do the dyeing process is you have to, like I said, you have to cook up the wool. But the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says you have to cook up the ink, and then afterwards you put in the wool. And it's a game changer, because it won't work otherwise. And if the Gemara is telling me the process of how to do it, then the Gemara would have had to say it in that way. But again, you could say, again, if it would be the real Murex, would be the real Chilazin, then even I'll agree that we'll just add a word here and lav dafka there. I'm just showing you, but when I'm going with the attitude of prove to me that the Murex is the Chilazin, it's not going to go. Because in this Gemara, one day they're going to come with a fish, and that fish is going to taka exactly just cook up the dye, and then after we put in the wool, and it's going to stim without being matcha the Gemara. Okay, but that Gemara I'm not going into. I had you didn't go into that Gemara. Nobody should think I did. Okay, next. The big taina, I mentioned before that Dr. Irving Zeiderman, he was the one that was the founder of this ganze movement, Kemat of Tcheiles. He has a raya brura that the Tcheiles today can't be Tcheiles, even though he says it is Tcheiles, right? But he himself has a raya brura that the Tcheiles, that the Murex is not the Tcheiles. Why? Because the Gemara Menachas and Daf Mem Gimel, as you realize, I'm going through the Gemaras. We went through Shabbos, now Menachas Mem Beis, that was Mem Beis, this is Mem Gimel, in a minute we'll do Mem Dal. The Gemara Mem Gimel, the Gemara says that how do you test if something is Kla Elon or if it's Tcheiles? If it's Tcheiles, then the Gemara basically says you do this test, you take some sulfur, you take some urine, and you put it together 40 days, and you soak it and whatever. And if it's the Kla Elon, it'll fade. Mashenkein, if it's the Tcheiles, if it's real Tcheiles, it won't fade. Okay? Now, is that test going to work? Based on what you heard before, I told you indigo and is Kla Elon, and that's what they say also. No one argues on that. Indigo is Kla Elon, and Murex is Tcheiles. Okay, is the test going to work? Who knows the answer? Who knows the answer? You know the answer. You heard already the answer from me. Is the test possible? It could work? Impossible. That's the exact same chemical makeup. It's impossible. So Dr. Irving Zeiderman says he did it. Doesn't work. The test doesn't work. Whatever happens to the Murex happens to the what's it called? The Kla Elon, the indigo. The test does not work. Doesn't work. The Gemara says first that Rav Achai did this test and it worked. Okay, so this murex is not Tcheiles because the test doesn't work. Now you're going to die. I could match the Gemara. Say that we don't know how to do the test. Whatever. We don't know how to do the test properly. We don't know what conditions they did it. Our urine is not the selbe urine. Verstehst? You know, du trinkst Coke, ich trink the Wein. Ich meine, das gewinnt andere. Ich weg nicht in Kasche. Ja? Rabbi say, Lu Yitzur, and when Mashiach comes, he shows me the real stuff and the test works. Is anyone going to have a Kasha? Does everybody understand what I keep on doing? I think you do by now. Right? But again, if you're coming with a Kabbalah that murex is Tcheiles, is game over. Then this Gemara, I'll be matzah. Okay. Next. The Gemara in Menachos and Daf Mem Daled. The Gemara says a chilazin looks like the yam, and it's daima briyasan to a fish, and it comes up once in 70 years, and it's very expensive. Okay, let's go one by one. Is murex trunculus daima to yam? No, because yam is blue, and murex trunculus is this dreadful brownish color. It is not daima to yam. So how do you answer that? It's not daima to yam. So again, if you're trying to prove to me that if you're going to prove to me, I'm not going to give in, because if it's doimet yam, this is what to talk about. If it's not doimet yam, so how do they answer this? Because they found Tcheiles. They say what? And the word doimet really means doimet. The Gemara says in esrog is doimet to a lave. Is it really doimet? So it's like a dimyan azar, whatever. Okay, next they say, so how's it doimet at all? Because not doimet at all. Blue is not close to brown, right? It's I look like you, Moshe. Right? Why? Because we both have a tie. He knows if he doesn't wear a tie, he gets yelled at, right? Like every week. But that's so. Okay, but we're doima. How are we doima? So they say like this. They say that it's doima because it's found at the bottom of the ocean. It has tons of algae on it. And algae is what color? Is algae blue or algae green? Algae is green. Very good. I see you spend a lot of time at the bottom of the ocean, Moshe. Okay, so algae is green. So what does that have to do with being daima to a yam? Because it's Ramban in one place that says the word yam sometimes could be interchanged for the ocean floor. So therefore, not the actual murex is daima to a yam, not the chilazin is daima to a yam, but the outer casing, no, not the outer casing either, no, the algae which is on top of the murex is doimet to a yam. It's not doimet to a yam, it's doimet to the bed of the yam. It's not doimet to the bed, it's the actual bed of the yam. And that's how they answer this Gemara. And I'm not joking. Right? Okay, let's go weiter. Then they say that the body is, by the way, in Masechta Sittis it says, Gufay doimel rakia. What are you going to do there? The sky is green. If the sky is green, Rabbi say, start saying Tehillim. But, okay. Al-Kapanim, I don't know what color it's in Vietnam, but I don't want to find out. Al-Kapanim, let's go weiter. Now they say that the shape is doimet to a fish. How's the shape doimet? It looks like a fish? No, it doesn't. It looks like a snail. If I'm trying to compare something, would I compare it to a fish or would I compare it to a snail? If it's a snail, I compare it to a snail. Okay, so how's it doimet to a fish? So they say like this. They say if you take a snail and you make it and you trace it and make it one-dimensional. So when you trace something and make it one-dimensional, you'll see that there's a narrow part, a thick part, and a thin part. That's a fish. Narrow part, thick part, thin part. Right? So therefore, it's doimet to a fish. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Why are you laughing? Can you please be serious? If you can't be serious, this year is not for you. All right? All right? We look alike. All right? It comes up once in 70 years. No, it doesn't. But that Rabbi says already that that was only maybe in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, but not today. Okay, that's doable. That's doable. That's doable. Okay, Rishayim. That does the Gemaras, Rishayim. Now, before I start this section, again, Hakdamas. That's how I do things. That's you've learned already. Now, there's a Gemara that says like this: In Rishayim kibnei Adam. Does everyone know the Gemara? If Rishayim are like bnei Adam, so the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, Rishayim kibnei Adam. If Rishayim kimalachim, if you treat Rishayim kimalachim, so then anu kibnei Adam. Then we are like people. If Rishayim are kibnei Adam, so then we're like Chamorim, and not the Chamor of Pinchas ben Yair. What does it mean? Bnei Adam is people forget. A man makes mistakes. People make mistakes. People forget. People make mistakes. If by you, when you learn Rishayim can make mistakes, they're Bnei Adam, then you're a Chamor. That's what Gemara is saying. We'll get to Kanayis maybe later. We're not there yet. Okay? But if you're going to say a Rishon made a mistake, you're saying what? You're saying he's a Bnei Adam. If you're saying you're a Bnei Adam, you know the end of the sentence. Now, I'm going to bring you now about 17 Rishayim that are all Baruch Hashem B'Tzarayim, that the murex is not the Chilazim. No shayla. Not even Shaila. How do they answer most of these times? Most of these times they say it's because they did not have the Murex. But Rega, they would have the Murex. They would have said different pshatim. Kloimar. The Rishonim all made a mistake. Right? Offer lapume. Chalila to even say such a thing. Right? Chalila to even say such a thing. To say such a thing? If to close that, a bacher that would say that, throw him out of our yeshivas. Throw him out of your yeshivas. I have not gotten to Kanayas. I told you I'm going objective tonight. But if somebody could say that the Rishonim can make a mistake, right? So fregnished, what's next? Okay, so let's start. The Rambam says that the ink of the Murex, of the ink of the Tcheiles, the ink of the Chalazin is black. Excuse me. The dam is black. Excuse me. The dam is black like ink. That's what Rambam says. The dam of the Chalazin is black like ink. Shachar Kidyai. That's what Rambam says. Is the dam of the Murex Shachar Kidyai? What's the answer? No, it's not. What is it? When it comes out, it's like some yellowish color or whatever, and then eventually you get a purple color or whatever. It's not black. It's never black. So what do they answer this? Again, they found Tcheiles, right? And, they found it. So, and they don't want to argue on the Rambam because the Rambam always is big over there. So how do you answer it? They say it like this. They say in the sack, the secretion is found. It's found in a sack inside. It went through the sack. It's black. When you look through the sack, I saw it. It's not black like ink, but it's black. It is black. It's black, right? So they say it's just like when you have your vein is blue, right? So when you look through the sack, it's black. The Hainu. That's like the Rambam writing like this. When he would want to describe the color of your blood, he would say, your blood is blue. Would the Rambam write that? In other words, if the Rambam was coming to describe the color of blood, he would describe it in how you see it in the vein. It's a very, very weird thing to say. It's a weird thing to say, but that's how they learn. Then the Rambam goes on and says, it's a dag, v'hu dag. It's a fish. They say anything that's found in the water you can call a fish. Right? There's a gra in Kalim that says that. When you have to say there's a goyin in Kalim, it's already, you understand yourself. Okay. Okay. That's a bit of a problem. Okay. Then it says, Einai ke'einat Tcheiles, its eyes are blue. It's nothing could be further from the truth. Okay. That's the Rambam. Rashi. And it's going in order of Varabeim, Rambam, Rashi. Rashi says that Tcheiles, the Chilazin, is a talas. What's a talas? Is a talas a snail or is a talas a worm? That's the one thing everyone agrees to. A talas is a worm. It's not a snail. The Lashainis in Chazal for a snail are not talas. So it's a snail. It's a snail. This is not a snail. Excuse me. In other words, the Murex is not a talas. So Rashi doesn't shtim. Rashi is in Daf Ayin Dalet. There's another Rashi where Rashi says that it's some type of kimin dag cotton. Rashi there seems to say it's some type of like a sea slug or something or whatever. There Rashi says like a little small type of a mini type of a fish. So it's maybe some mini type of fish. Maybe there's a steer in Rashi. Maybe it's a worm, but it's vade, not a snail. Whatever it is, Rashi chose everything. Rashi told you it's a snail. No. Rashi told you it's a worm. Yes. Rashi told you it's a fish. Yes. So what'll be when Mashiach comes? We'll figure it out then. Right? But if you're trying to prove to me that this is, okay, let's go weiter. Rashi says like this. Rashi in Daf Ayin Hey says poitzai. When he goes on the lashon of the Gemara, when you poitzeya it, we said you're over on disha. On that line, Rashi says that now they bring a raya from the lashon of the Gemara poitzai to them. Because they say, what does poitzai mean? I told you before, the word poitzeya always in Chazal, the Eglei Tal says this. The word poitzeya in Chazal means what? To smash, to crack. Poitzei is moicha, poitzei is moicha, and this. A lot of things get confusing because in modern Hebrew, a lot of the words, Ben Yehuda wasn't exactly the pride of our yeshivas, right? So a lot of the words don't sometimes what we know from modern Hebrew. But the word poitzeia in the Lashon Chazal really usually does mean to crack. It means to crack. So they say that's a riot to them because the Gemara says that poitzeia, when you're poitzeia the chalazin, so then what happens? That's when you get the dye and you're over on disha. What do you petzeya? You don't petzeya fish, right? You would squeeze fish, right? When you have a shell, you have to petzeya. They say that's a right to them. Okay, but they didn't read Rashi. Rashi went out of his way over here and says, what does it mean petzeya? Zakt Rashi, they squished it. They didn't crack it. Rashi says, not the Pashup Shah. The Eglei Tal says, why did Rashi do that? He could have learned petzeya kepshutai, right? Now, if it's a murex, so then obviously Rashi wouldn't have changed the pshat. Obviously Rashi would have just learned that the word patzeh means to crack it. Rashi just told you it's not a murex. Again, but Rashi's fair. So what's the answer on this one? If Rashi would have had a murex, is what they write. If Rashi would have had a murex, he wouldn't have said what he said. Kloimar, Rashi is a ben adam, right? As a bezais, du bist a chamor. Does everyone understand? That's Rashi. Okay, Taisvis. No, we have to go in order of the Rishonim. It's Rambam. I think that's how we do it. Does anybody have somebody I missed? Rambam, Rashi, Taisvis. Then you go to the Sfarish Rishonim, the Rambam. We'll go in a minute, but we'll go. That's the order I take. Unless you want, is there somebody I missed? I don't think so. So Rambam, Rashi, Taisvis. Taisvis says like this. Taisvis says, in Dafayin Hey, he talks about over there that you should be chayiv for removing the chilazin from the water. There's an old need. In the second I remove the chilazin from the water, I should be over on netilas neshama. That's how he dons. The Gemara dons on squeezing the blood. But he says, what do you mean? Once I take it out of the water, the second I take it out of the water, I should be over on murder, because he dies when you take it out of the water. Okay? Taisus answers, maybe because he has to shake around and be mefarches, and he wouldn't have died without the shaking around, and Ibasai, he killed himself, you didn't kill him. That's Taisus. This Taisus is explicit that the murex is not the chilazin. Because the murex, when you take him out of the water, he don't flap, he don't die, he doesn't die for a very long time. He could stay alive for 12 hours, if not even more. So you just were described what's a chilazin. A chilazin is something that when you take him out of the water, he dies. When you take him out. And he's mefarchis and then he dies. That does not happen with the murex. It's impossible to happen with the murex. The murex, once you take him out of the water, he doesn't die. And he certainly doesn't mefarchis. So how do you answer this? Taisvis didn't have a murex. Okay. 5 lines later, they bring a taisvis. That's a raya to them. You understand? Where in the taisvis just told us explicitly it's not. But they bring a raya because Taisus says, he discusses another shaila, that something about squeezing the blood, why aren't you over on chavala? Taisus says, because the blood is mifkid pakid. Did the Olam ever learn ksuvis? Right, so the Gemara in Ksuvis talks about 2 types of blood. And the Gemara says that the blood is mifkid pakid. Mifkid pakid means that it's in a sack. So they say, gavaldik, the murex also has blood in a sack. So it must be that Taisus held that the murex is taka Tcheiles, because the Taisus is talking about a certain type of a creature or something that has blood in a sack. And since it's blood in a sack, therefore you're not over in Chavala. I hear. But a minute ago, Taisus just said that when you take the murex out, he shakes and then he dies. And yours doesn't. Okay, that part, Taisus didn't have a murex. Right? But this point, Taisus accidentally got right. So you see, mamish the siyata d'shmaya of the Rishonim. That even when they're making mistakes, they get things right. Okay, if the roof starts caving in, right, everybody should just come, to that side of the base medrash if it just starts caving in. Okay, so Taisus is not just Taisus. Taisus is the Taisus Arash. Okay, now all the Rishonim, the Ritva, the Ran, the Ra'ah, the Ramban, the Meiri, the list goes on and on. I don't want to insult any Rishonim, but I'm not sure if they'd want to be a part of this year. Anyways, right? So all the Rishonim ask Taisus' question. Okay? They all ask this question I just asked, that when you have netilas neshama, all the Rishonim ask this question, why don't you have, when you're taking out the blood, netilas neshama? Now, if the chilazin is a murex, the easiest answer in the world is what you just heard, because the dam is mifkid pakid. That means there's no question. Now, they're asking a question that when I'm taking the dam, so the dam, when I'm pressing out the dam should be considered in halacha a netilas and a sham. It should be netilas. It doesn't mean murder. In this case, it means chavala. So they say they ask Taisus a question. All the Rishonim. Now, if you learn a chilazin is a murex, what's the answer to this question? The easiest answer in the world is it's a mifkid pakid. In other words, if you learn that there's a sack, so then what's the answer? The answer is it's very simple. Let's say even what I'm telling you, it might be a fish one day. Who knows what? I don't know what. So then, if this fish would have a sack. Let's say when the Mashiach comes, the fish will have a sack. So then if the fish has a sack, so then what's the answer? Why when I press it out the blood, it's not the teretz is? Because it's mifkid pakid. And there's no mifkid pakid. You know what they answer? They answer some ganze teretz. That it's a very low amount of dam, klape tzchias. It doesn't really have a ganze teretz. I don't want to go into their teretz. But it's borrowed from their teretz that they were not dealing with a murex. Because if they were dealing with a murex, the easiest teretz in the world, like the Tcheiles guys say, like the murex guys say, that they say that the answer is it's mifkid pakid. That's how they answer the question. And if you would have a murex, this is the answer you would give. Right? So what did all the Rishonim just say? They just said that the murex is not a chilazon. So that's everyone. And the Tosfos Rid we mentioned before, that's all the Rishonim. The Ravid and the Ramami Pano was one of the Mekubalim. They say that the Tcheilet, the chilazon, is a cross between an animal and a plant, and it's attached to the ground, and it dies when it's detached. The murex is not attached to the ground. It doesn't die when you take it off of the ground because it's not attached. And therefore, so we know that these Rishonim hold not like that. Now again, you're going to ask me, does that stem with other things we said? I understand, but you're trying to tell me that I have to wear this because you found it, right? But now I'm going to tell you, no matter what, it doesn't stem with this. Now this it's getting late, and the list does go on. I have another about 40 rayas, and we won't have time for that. But let's just at least, the Yad Raman Sanhedrin says it rains down from Shemayim. These things don't rain down from Shemayim, But okay. Now, Klapping their rayas, the truth is, I think you realize already, most of the rayas you heard are really not such rayas. The rayas that they had. Like, for example, they found this, football field of murex. Sounds pretty good, right? Let me ask you a question. The murex has a dye, right? Is it possible that that's, they were painting other things there? For example, they found this garment which had on it murex, which wasn't tzitzit string, but they found murex. That means that it was an industry of murex. Now, does that therefore mean it's Tcheiles? No. So they ask, but where then is the Tcheiles? Where are the chilazons? The answer is maybe chilazon's a fish, and what would happen after you squeeze it? They would just disintegrate after a while. If you would put 4 billion dead fish into dust, so what would the truth is, they would probably eat the fish also. Why not? They would probably just eat it, and the bones would be used for toothpicks. But I'm saying, so that raya is not exactly a raya. It's not exactly right. Meaning, it would be gewaldic if you had a Kabbalah that this was the Tcheiles, the chilazon. So then I would say, oh, look at this. They actually did it back then. The Dama Vikarim, this is all Leitzanis. The reason it was Dama Vikarim is because it was once in 70 years. So it cost a lot of money. All these things are Leitzanis. What about the Raya Berurah Sheinel of Tshuva? What is the Raya Berurah? Remembers that Kla Elon is the same chemical makeup as murex. Right? The same chemical makeup as murex. So besides, they should have at least warned you, don't wear Kla Elon and don't wear murex. That's a Grace Ataina, right? That's a Grace Ataina. So what's the answer? The answer is, they themselves bring from the Goyish writings and the Greek writings that murex was riesig expensive. Riesig expensive, right? That's what they say. It was so maybe you only have to warn. I'm trying to trick you and tell you I'm not wearing, I see you guys are smiling already, it means yichab, right? I'm trying to trick you and pretend like I'm wearing Tcheiles. I'm trying to trick you. So what am I going to do? I'm going to buy something which is more expensive than Tcheiles to trick you. That's like, the Vilna Pikoris over here, It's like, he's mamish trying to get you. Like, he's willing to spend money on it. It's mamish like in this week's parsha, Kairach filled up begadim of Tcheiles in order to get Moshe Rabbeinu. It's a lot of money he had to spend, a begadim full of Tcheiles, So that's one possible answer, is that the Gemara didn't have to warn because there's nobody in his right mind that's going to do that. It's just not Kedai. You might as well just wear the Tcheiles. The truth is, the Kesef Mishnah already answers the kasha. The Kesef Mishnah, I wrote down where, in case anybody's interested in all these Marmukaimis, the Kesef Mishnah is in Hilchot Tzitzis, in Beis over there. He says that the Kla Elon is a term which refers to anything which is that level of dimyan to, the Gemara only brought one example. The Kla Elon is a term, it's something which is so closely related, so maybe Kla Elon includes murex too, and the real chilazon is something else. But again, I told you an answer even without the Kesef Mishnah. In other words, that it's the most simple thing in the world. They themselves state the most expensive thing in the world is this murex. So if I'm trying to trick you, why would I wear this and spend more money? I might as well just wear Tcheiles and not be such a bad guy. And the rayas go on and on and on. And it's barer that all the Rishonim are against this and do not hold that the murex trunculus is chilazon. That's barer. And there's countless Gemaras here that you see are clearly not like that. And they obviously are describing something else. And they have Gemaras that if it would have been that the murex trunculus, we had a Kabbalah, those Gemaras would be good, and then these Gemaras would have to be match, which means that the Tcheiles that they found is obviously no different than the Redziners, and that it's not Tcheiles. Kloimar, I didn't tonight go into, a whole different levels of tainas of maybe we don't even know how to do the samanim properly, and therefore you might not be allowed to put Tcheiles on unless you know how to do samanim. I didn't go with that tonight. That's another whole parsha. Well, they'll say we do know how to put on the samanim, or we do know what the substances are. The last taina is that l'chayra layoya layazik. Was brenzach? What's the big deal? What hurts you to put on it? So what? Maybe it's after everything you heard tonight. Is it maybe Tcheiles? Right? The answer is no, beyond the shadow of a doubt, because all the Rishonim say it's not. But let's say you hold Rishonim Rabnei Adam, right? So if you hold Rishonim Rabnei Adam, is it maybe Tcheiles? Yes. Okay. So if you're a chamor, right? So why not just wear it? Right? Sorry?
Chamor don't have to wear tzitzis.
Because chamorim are part of tzitzis. Yeah. Okay. But does it hurt? Are you doing an avera? Are you doing an avera by wearing it? Is it an avera by wearing it? It's probably an avera because all the Gedolei Yisrael don't wear it. So to be such a balgaiva that you know better than the Gedolei Yisrael, okay, whatever. But that's not. So now I'm going to tell you 4 reasons why. If I have something that's 90% Tcheiles, then if there's a problem, maybe I'd still wear it. If I have something which is 80% Tcheiles, then if I have a problem, maybe it's... If I have something that's 1% Tcheiles, and I could show you 4 different issues, so why would I want to get involved in these 4 issues when it's only 1%? What if I have something which is 0% Tcheiles, and I'm going to bring you 4 issues? So do you think you should wear it? What's the answer? You guys are very smart. It's amazing. I see from your smiles, you know the answers. Okay. So now I'm going to tell you 4 answers. 4 reasons. The Besamim Reish, who he himself is a controversial character. If he himself was the Rosh, the Chasam Sofer calls him the Kizbei Rosh, right? The Shkarim of the Rosh. It's not the Rosh. He's controversial, but somehow with all the controversy, the Achrayim seem to always bring him. Right? So in Siman Reish Mem Dalet, they found some dog-like individual. God, it was a dog there, but it was a dog-like individual which was Tcheiles. And he says, no, you need a Messiah Ish Mipiyish. It's impossible to get the color. Don't do it. And he said, just like you don't take a pomegranate for an esrig, don't do it. He says, why not? Why not? Just do it. He says, because let's say there's a year, there's no esrig, so you don't take a pomegranate. You know why? Because asi lemesrach. Because then people are actually going to start buying into this narishkeit, and they're going to go and think, pomegranate is good, right? And then Mashiach, when he comes, he's going to have to deal with this. Now you see what happens, right? The first thing he's going to have to deal with is, no, this isn't it, right? That's his taina. We don't do that. Asi lemesrach. Okay. Again, if it was 99% Tcheiles, I would tell you, Samim Rosh is not so musmach. If it was 99% Tcheiles, I would tell you, don't worry about it. Nishkefelach. Okay. The Rabbi Yashiv in the Tshuva, it's one of the first Tshuvas over here, he has a different taina. Rabbi Yashiv says, Rabbi Yashiv goes through, which is, I didn't go through tonight. Rabbi Yashiv goes that the Beis HaLevi says that the Rishonim, they loved the mitzvahs more than we do, right? They didn't have to listen to an Uncle Moshe song to get involved in doing mitzvahs, right? They loved the mitzvahs. So he says, you see it stopped, and in Kol Zeis, he says, B'Ishlam, if they would have found a fish or something that we never had in the last 1,000 years, and then they found it. So then you could say that the Rishonim didn't even have this fish. We, with our scuba diving on it, we found a fish that they didn't have. Then you could say that, right? But this was a fish which was accessible. It existed in the last 1,000 years. So why didn't the Rishonim take this fish and this snail and whatever and make tcheilos out of it, right? That was the Beis HaLevi's taina on the Radziner and whatnot. So the cuttlefish and whatnot. So he says, Elamai, the lashon of the Beis HaLevi, he says, that's Ki'ilu Yesh Lano Kabbalah Messiah. This dog is not it. Because the Rishonim loved mitzvahs more than us, and if they would have known that there's a fish, they would have went after it and they would have found it, right? So it's a raya that it's not the fish. That's what it is. The guy in Mikutna says, Huxlak Etzleinu, 1,000 years, Nignas Atcheilas, he brings down Nignas, right? But so then Rabbi Yashiv says, no, so what's the big deal? So just wear it. What's the big deal? Maybe it's Tcheilas, right? He goes on, he says, Ana lo yadana. We don't know, maybe this will be just like the Radziners that was proven wrong. In 10 years from now, they could find something else, and they'll say, this is it. And they'll explain to us why Taka, we weren't able to find it until now, and it'll stem with 3 more of the Gemaras and whatever. That's how it goes. So he says, so then why not just wear it? Maybe. So he says because there's a din in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Taz that you have to make lasei setzitis mitzeva talis, that the strings have to be the color of the talis. It's min kanaf. Hatam debina b'zeh min akanaf. Now that din is the whole shaila if it's likuva, not likuva, and whatever. It's not the worst thing in the world. And some want to say that taina is only on the lavan, not on the tcheiles and whatnot, right? Same Cain. So he says, if your tcheiles is not the right color, it's not the right tcheiles, so then your beged should be blue and white, Israeli flag, whatever, it should be something, but it shouldn't just be white. It shouldn't be white. Now, is this the biggest taina? Not really. Min kanaf is something that's very low down on the list. But if I have something which is 99% tcheiles, I'll be makel on the min kanaf. But you're asking me, why not just wear it? What do you lose? I'll tell you what I lose. By me, it's 0% tcheiles. I'll give them a 0.001%. It's a 0.0001%, right? So, because maybe the pshat they said in the Rambam that every fish is called a dag, everything in the sea is called a dag, and what was the other thing that through the veins? So maybe they got the Rambam. No, the Rambam will be against all the Rishonim, maybe. So let's say. So then one day it'll be proven it's the right thing. So it's a 1% chance that they're right. No, on that 1%, it wouldn't be worth it to me because 99% they're wrong. And on the 1%, I'm going to be over on this din of min knaf. The din min knaf says that the tzitzis have to be the same color, but reggae it's blue. My tzitzis, unless you want to start making it blue in my beged. Right? Here, maybe. What?
Make the stripes blue.
Yeah. Okay, maybe, man, I'm saying, but none of us did that. But yeah, okay, not the worst thing. There's eitzes, right? There's another taina, which is Rabbi Parallel. He was a big goyin. Rezachain Vandenfeld said, going outdoor, you have to sit 10 years in a room to write the sefer he wrote. He probably did it in 3. He writes over there an unbelievable chumrah. It's a chiddush naira. He writes over there that if you misrepresent citizens tefillin, you're over on l'sisa. So again, it's not something we're usually machmir for. But if there's a 0% chance that this is Tcheiles, I'm not taking a chance on him saying that it's l'sisa. These tainas don't bother me as much. Then you get to the mekubalim, they get scary. The Mekubalim, the Ben Ichai, others, the Ben Yoyada, they go that there's a Gemara that I just mentioned. Asin HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be peireya from someone that wears kla ilan and says it's tcheiles. Now the Pashup Pshat is he's trying to trick you. They learned that Gemara al Pisaid. Asin HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be peireya from someone who wears on his beged kla ilan, something which is not tcheiles, and when he's really only supposed to be wearing tcheiles. Now they bring things up Kabbalah that blue, this type of blue al-kapanim, this indigo blue, is a color that has a tfisa by the Sitra Achra. And that the only color, Zelu Mazeh Barlakim, when you have tcheiles, the real tcheiles, that has the ability to counter that koyach of the Sitra Achra. But if you're wearing the evil color blue, Kilaymar, this evil tcheiles, this non-tcheiles, so then you're giving koyach to the Sitra Achra. Now, if it would be 99% that this is actually tcheiles, so maybe you'll say, I don't know, Sitra Achra, I don't do things al pi Kabbalah. But if it's 0.01% chance, so I'm not taking chances with chappering with the Sitra Achra. Does everybody understand? I'm not taking chances of chappering with the Sitra Achra when that. So what's the maskan of the shir? The maskan of the shir is I don't know if I read this yet, but what it says in the Sefer Aruch HaShulchan. Aruch HaShulchan in Siman Tes in Sifyud Aleph, so he writes like this. In Sifyud Beis, he writes, V'da, you should know, someone found the chilazin, and he made tcheiles, and some people went after him. I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you a secret. The Marsham, they say, wore this tcheiles of the Radziner in private, right? Which means that the Radziner and the Marsham, who were two big Geoinim and two big Gedolim, they wore this tcheiles, the tcheiles of the Radziner. They wore it. And the Aruch HaShulchan writes that lo haya lo shameya migdoilei hador. That means that he's telling you a big lesson. They come, the chevra that hold the murex is tcheiles, and they say they always find one person who's wearing the tcheiles. That one person's wearing the tcheiles. You all know that all your rebbeim and all the gedolei Yisrael are not wearing the tcheiles. That's what the Aruch HaShulchan just said. They themselves were big people. Marsham was of the biggest people. I'm not going to say I don't believe he wore it. It's only B'tzinas, so who knows? He wore it, maybe, I don't know. And the Radziner himself was an Adam Gadol Mamish. So we could do the same thing. Anybody that's wearing tcheiles today, I guarantee you, is not as big as the Radziner was. The Radziner was Adam Gadol Shabbat. And how does the Aruch HaShulchan Mesiachas to this? He says, what are you talking about? If all the other Gedolei Yisrael are not doing it, that's the answer. Like Hayel Shemei Migdolei Ador, Umiklal Yisrael, V'nisbatel Adover Ad Yavoy Goyel Sedek Bimheira B'Yameinu Amen. Oh, he's right. There was one thing. He's right. So why this week? That's right. Thank you. I had a feeling I would forget. Why Daka Parsha Shlach? Because in Parsha Shlach is a limud of what can happen when you start out with a negiyah. in the Meraglim, they started out, we're not going to Eretz Yisrael. Because, Nikudah, we're going to lose our jobs, we're not going to Eretz Yisrael. This, over here, you're seeing the buildup of this was, not. I'm going to be the first to admit, usually whenever I gave Shirim in Tcheiles, I was the one that did it in that way. I came with the gang, it's not Tcheiles, and it's against the Gedal Yisrael, and Nignas and Kol Tuv. That's how I did it. This time I did it the opposite direction. Right? I showed they found Tcheiles. Now every single thing else will be Matcha, the Gemaras, the Rishonim, everybody, everything, the Kabbalah, Hakol, Bakol, Mikol, all the Gedal Yisrael and everything. Why? Because when you start with a Negiah, so then it's going to work. That's it. We're not going to Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is going to be bad. Now you understand? Okay. I get the vach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.